Cardinalson. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Strategic Planning. A couple of housekeeping rules, please, just to begin with. Under the Openness of Local Government Bodies Regulation 2014, members of the public or those party to the meeting are permitted to film, broadcast or report on the meeting subject to the efficient running of the meeting not being affected. Okay. Only those people who have registered in line with the committee's speaking procedure can address the committee. Members of the public are requested not to call out during the committee's discussion on any item. All speakers will have 5 minutes in which to make their statement. Participants addressing the planning committee will be advised when they have 60 seconds of their allocated time remaining and will be expected to cease talking immediately on being advised their time is up. Speakers may be asked to remain seated after they have addressed the committee to answer questions from the planning committee members. There are no planned fire drills, so if the alarm does sound, evacuation instructions will be given by democratic officers and the assembly point is at the bottom of the steps on the mount. Could electronic devices please be switched off or onto silent mode? For those members using laptops, could I please ask they press F1 on their machines and a blue light will come on indicating the sound is muted. Thank you. Right. Apologies for absence and appointment of substitute members, please.
Thank you, Chair. We have apologies from Councillor Bignell with the substitute of Councillor Irving Swift. Apologies from Councillor Gonzalez de Savage with Councillor Clark substituting, and apologies from Councillor Herring, Addison and Russell. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Members, any declarations of interest? Councillor James.
Yes, it's a bit trivial, really. I mentioned it at the Farthingstone Golf Club application. I used to be a member of Farthingstone Golf Club until I injured my back. So I'm no longer a member, I haven't been for some considerable time. But just in case somebody thinks I have a view that's prejudicial in any way. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor James. Nobody else. Thank you. Minutes. To confirm the minutes of the meeting of the committee held on the 22nd of May 23. Is everybody happy that Councillor Stone?
I was present.
Yeah, most certainly were. So can we pick that one up? We'll pick that one up. In addition to the Councillor Stone being present, is everything else okay with the minutes? Yes. Thank you. Right, there's no chair's announcement except Sean Robson would just make a brief point about some of the planning application. Over to Sean, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. And just through you, just for members' note, page 15 of the agenda is the first item. On the first page, about halfway down the first page, it mentions the ward as Weedon. Unfortunately, that was a typo. That should be Long Buckby as the ward. And just for confirmation, clarification for members, whilst it reads Weedon as the ward, all the correct ward councillors, the Buckby ward, have been consulted and were consulted on the application. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Right, in that case, we'll move to the first application, which is WND 2022/0410, and ask Erica to start, please. Thank you, Erica.
This application is for a land at Glassop Hill and land off Brickham Road, and is a change of use from agricultural land to solar farm and the construction operation of a solar photovoltaic development with a capacity of 49.9 megawatts with associated infrastructure and planting. The solar farm comprises of 999,840 solar panels arranged in linear arrays mounted on aluminium frames. This is the site location plan, and the area in red is the site. This is the site layout. As you can see, the arrays, and there's 3 meters in between each array. It's 2 areas. It's one area, and this is the other area. This is the master, sorry. This plan here is the master plan, shows a bit more detail of the arrays and the works that will be done to it, which will show me more details later on in the presentation. This is an example of the solar panels and structures. The structures would be 3 meters in height and 3 meters apart. This is an MPV power station, and there is proposed 17 throughout the site. There's two customer and DNO substations are being proposed, along with a spares and storage cabin. Security fencing is 2 meters high, wooden posted, a mesh, so it's deer fencing. The access routes to the site for the construction and decommissioning will come off the M1, the A45. This is the roundabout at the A45, the M1 junction. It's proposed to come into here, which is the eastern access, which will eventually be the main access into the site. And with Upper Hayford here, and then come into there. This is on the edge of floor into the Brington Road access. This is the proposed alterations to the Brington Road access to provide access for it, again, for the construction and decommissioning only. This is the proposed alterations to the eastern access up from on the other side of the M1. And this is further improvements along the eastern road to allow for the construction traffic to go through and for pedestrians. On the landscaping, this is the landscaping master plan. There is proposed to be a biodiversity net gain of 36% for habitats, 11% for hedgerows. There are 2 long range footpaths that go through the site. There's Midshires Way, which is this one, and Macmillan Way, which is this one. It's proposed on the Macmillan Way side to have as wild meadows. And again, all the yellow part here is all going to be wild meadow. The existing wooded areas were being retained along with the hedgerows. There's existing agricultural buildings here, which again would be retained. Some sites, this is the first field from the existing unmade access road, which was proposed to have solar farms. This is the unmade access road from Little Hayford within the site. These are the agricultural buildings that are within the site, which again will be retained. It's Glassthorpe Hill and Midshires Way footpath into the site. This is view across the field for Brington Road access field, where there will be some meadows and you will see some solar farm panels there. And this is the Macmillan Way access from Brington Road. Obviously, the proposal relates to the provision of renewable energy and low carbon technology, where it states that these proposals would be supported in principle, subject to it being demonstrated that proposals have been designed in terms of location and scale to minimise any adverse impacts.
Chair, can I just ask you use the microphone?
Oh, sorry, 'cause that must. Yeah, the proposal relates to provision of renewable energy, low carbon technology, where it states that the proposal would be supported in principle, subject to being demonstrated that proposals have been designed in terms of location and scale to minimise any adverse impact on adjacent land uses and local residential amenity. It's considered that with the proposed mitigation proposals, increased hedges, infilling gaps, the wild meadows, and the net gain, that the solar farm would complies with all of that, and therefore it's recommended for approval, subject to the conditions set out in the report. Just also as an update, we have had a very late representation from CPRE. Basically, they in the report, it just says that it's loss of agricultural land. They wanted to add in that they also objected on the designated landscape and impact on the settlements and the public rights of way.
Members, does anyone wish to ask the officer any questions related to what she's just said? Councillor Humphreys.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just clarify, is it about 2/3 of the site is a special landscape area? Yeah.
Could I ask if we have a strategy for the use of agricultural land? And have we scoped the need for agricultural land in WNC?
Through to you, Chair, if I may. Sorry, Councillor, just in terms of that point you mentioned, do you mean in terms of the offer that we as an authority have within our administrative boundary, or do you mean nationally in terms of the designation? Because there is the classification of agricultural land in terms of different grading that we look at. Is that what you made reference to in terms of what grade of agricultural land it is? Or did you just mean the strategy for ourselves as the council in terms of how we propose or want to see the land developed? That, if that is the case, then that will be picked up to the local plan, or the new local plan. It's going to be brought forward in terms of percentage. Sorry, can you hear that now? Is that better? Sorry, in terms of the allocations, the agricultural land does have, there's a national recognition or classification of let me take it back in, agricultural land throughout the length and breadth of the country. Or are you asking or seeking clarification on the council's approach to agricultural strategy within the authority's administrative boundary? If that's the case, then that will be brought through as part of the local plan in terms of percentages, or what we're looking at allocating, or percentage or entertaining, looking at allocating for different use classes within the development.
I'm just mindful, Chair, that the landscape we're living in is changing and food production is going to become more and more important. So I take Sean's point, but we need to incorporate something about that in the new local plan. If it's not applicable now, we need it.
Sorry, Chair, through you, Councillor, that's let me just correct that. Sorry, that particular point is completely outside the scope of the determination of this planning application. I do get the point, but it's for a different forum and a different place and a different time.
But it means we don't have a strategy. That's the point I was trying to get to.
Chair, if I could, through you, if I could just clarify that point, your officer has actually stated that it's determined through the local plan, so there will be an assessment to a degree, and that will be found in the report.
Okay, sorry. Councillor Bob Person.
That's better. have a policy on the maximum size? I know we have a policy that supports solar farms in a particular. Do we have a policy that states the maximum size that a solar panel array might be?
Yes, through you, Chair, if I may. We don't. There is a definition between the size of the solar farms. You probably noticed part of the presentation that this application is 49.9 megawatts. As soon as it comes to 50 megawatts or more, then it's an NSIP application, an infrastructure application, which is dealt with by a wing of the Planning Inspectorate, which we would then be effectively, even though being the authority's administrative boundary, we would effectively be a consultee, like a parish or town council or CPRE or Natural England would form comments on that basis. So to answer your question, there isn't a size threshold. The only threshold that does exist, sorry, a size threshold in the local plan. There is a size threshold that does exist, and that's something that differentiates between a local authority, ourselves, determine the application, or whether or not it goes to a designation or wing of the Planning Inspectorate under government direction.
Councillor Pritchard.
Thank you, Chair. With regards to the extent, shall we say, that this will be occupied by the solar farm, 37 years, or should we say 40 years, roughly about that time, surely that's excessive compared to some of the other applications that's come in front of this committee. They've normally been round about 25 years.
Chair, I was going to ask why 40 years? There needs to be a logical explanation.
Sorry, can I have my question answered?
Can we just
please?
do that one first, please, Councillor Stone? It's easier then.
3 years. It's, yeah, the application is for 40 years, but in my previous, for solar farms, they usually are 40 years. Sometimes they're even for more longer than that one. I don't know what about this authority, but other authorities I've worked at with solar farms, they are 40 years.
So that's the normal rate, as to
That's
say in the
normal,
past.
yes.
Yeah.
It used to be 35, but now it's recently, because of the advances in technology,
Yeah.
that it's increased to 40 years.
Thank you. Next question is with regards to, do we know whether national power or the national grid can accept this sort of generation of power from the solar farm?
Yes, there would be, otherwise it wouldn't be putting in the application.
Well,
for it, but
if
it's-
I may say, in
yeah.
the past, we've had trouble with particularly the national grid and Western Power in this area to actually accept some of the power that's been generated from solar farms.
I think we have to look at the application in front of us and say, that's what's there. So that's what we're going on, to be
Yeah.
honest with you.
Okay, if it could be noted anyway.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then my last question, is there the ability for the land itself, the pasture land, to be actually grazed by sheep? Because there is some farms or some solar farms that we've actually been in front of us, they've actually been to that height where sheep could actually graze underneath and you could utilise the land for agricultural purposes.
Yes, it is planned to have the use for land management. They're intending to have it for sheep grazing within the panels.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sorry, Councillor, beg your pardon. Councillor Manners, beg your pardon.
Thank you, Chair. Do you have any information on the visual impact study, please? And you show us some pictures. Because there are a number of comments about levels of being significant in terms of the impact. Chair, if this isn't prepared, then I would really suggest that, given that we didn't have a site visit, and that is really what the site visit really is all about, is to understand the visual impact of one of many issues. I'm slightly unhappy that we don't have that information in front of us.
Yes,
One further point, every other application that we've seen, I think, on this committee for what I call large areas of agricultural land being taken out of land production and put into either greenhouses or solar have had a visual impact study presented.
through you, Chair, if I may. Yes, it's not part of the presentation now, but it is part of the documentation. I know a lot of members tend to read the information that's accompanied on the website, and the LVIA did come in with the application, so they have submitted a landscape visual impact assessment as part of the submission. So you would like us to repeat what's already on there, which a lot of members do tend to look at themselves prior to meetings. Okay.
Sorry, we'll take that on board for future meetings.
Oh, I mean, I think we should consider it now.
I'm not sure how we consider it now when it's on the system. We can't talk it through now, can we? It's there on the system. All I can say is for future reference, if that's what you want, members want, then we can produce it. But it is sitting there.
Chair, if it helps, is the point one of clarity, or is it something that members need more information on? Is it?
I'm just concerned that we're potentially approving with the officer's recommendation a significant change to the visual landscape on this site. And I think it's remiss of us not to present that at this meeting and not to have done a site visit to understand the full implications. I mean, I know the site from driving past. I've known that it's been on the agenda for some time, but I haven't walked the site in terms of the actual seeing where the panels and what trees are going to be planted and hedgerows are going to be planted to actually mitigate. So, I mean, I would suggest that we actually consider deferring this application.
Just to you, Chair, if I can seek a little bit of clarification on that point. So this is above and beyond the comments from the landscape officer that's raised no objection to the application based on their review of the information that is on the website. But as the landscape professional has said, there isn't a problem with the proposal.
I understand what the professionals have said, but I mean, like anything in this world, you can find endless experts to give you different views. And I just think we should be considering that at this committee.
It's a point, but it's there. You've got the landscape officer, so he's given his opinion. So presumably we'll go with the opinion. Councillor Gonzalez.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a point. Established principle, we did go and see a similar development in Welsh Lane some year ago thereabouts, and it was quite evident that the topography effectively was very much a part of the application, and actually we would never have really appreciated what the application was about in its fullness without having been on that site visit. So I do concur with Councillor Manners in terms of seeing a site visit of this particular area. I'm not against it or for it at the moment. I just think it is important to try and understand it in the fullness of where we are. The other point is that I believe that those applications, there were two that came before us, both of them were for 25 years. So I do remember we had extensive conversations in terms of reinstatement of the land at the time. I might be completely wrong, but I'd like to certainly understand that more in terms of the comparison of those two sites. They were quite significant, and clearly we do need to look for sites of this type. I'd just like to see the full impact. I'm sure that if we have it on file, we could also perhaps see a visual today, maybe of that particular element that was submitted in the pack. That might be useful also. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gonzalez. Right. Let's see if I can bring this to an end. Sorry, beg your pardon, Councillor Humphreys.
Thank you, Chair. Just on this visual impact issue, which is the crux of the matter. We do have the landscape officer's assessment, but we also got an independent assessment by a chartered landscape architect commissioned by the council to review the LVIA, which differs a great deal as to the potential for harm, which, we ought to take into account, but the officer's view is it's a difference of professional opinion. So, rather uncomfortable with that and wonder if, when you do commission these independent reports, is it then just, are they taken into account, and then how does it work? I mean, if it's not really, if it sort of appears to be discounted.
Yeah, the report, Daventry area have their own landscape officer.
Yeah.
Because the other solar farms within the wider West Northants had their landscape reviewed. We had ours reviewed. The draft one came back was, we did have our landscape officer at Daventry area had the discussions with the other landscape, with the landscape consultant. Some of the points that our landscape officer made, our consultant amended his report as a result of it. But the view is, as I've said in my report, the view of harm is dependent on, any development will cause some harm, is the degree of harm. And that's the difference. So where the consultant said he felt that there was more harm, whereas our
He says
landscape officer said he didn't think that with the mitigating measures that's being proposed was not as harm. And it's whether they harm out the benefits of the
Yeah,
solar farm
I appreciate
outweighs that harm.
He says some details that there could be significant adverse harm, which, again, it points to the need for a site visit,
Yeah.
quite frankly.
Right, so I'll bring it to an end now. Right, members, you've heard everyone speak about various issues. Have you got enough information in front of you to make a decision, or would you like to defer it? Those who wish to defer it, could they please put their hands up? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Those who do not want to defer it. 1, 2. Abstentions, please. 1. Right. We'll defer it for a site visit, and I look forward to the people who wanted to defer it to be at the site visit to see it. Okay, members? Thank you for that. Sorry, John. Oh, okay. I'm reliably informed it needs to be proposed and seconded. Can't take my word for it. So who would like to propose that? Councillor Purser, would you like to propose that?
Yeah, I formally propose that we defer the consideration of this application until pending a site visit.
Thank you. I could have a seconder, please. Councillor Gonzalez. Do you want to take a vote again? Do we need to take a vote?
Thank you, Chair. I'll second the application.
Yeah, thank you. We'll take it a vote again just to make absolutely sure. So that's the motion put forward, that we put this meeting, put the application off to defer it. So those to defer the application. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Those against. 1, 2. Any abstentions? 1, sorry, amends 2. Sorry, I forgot to vote 2. Okay, so that's what we intend to do. The motion's carried to defer the application for a site visit. Thank you, everybody. Excuse me. Member of the public, you don't speak to the committee. Thank you. We now move to the second application, which is, find it, WND 2023-0155. And ask Eamon to take us through it, please.
Thanks, Chairman. Can everyone hear me? Yep, good. Right, as I say, the applications are set up there in description. It's for the demolition of existing buildings, a redevelopment of the existing hotel and golf course complex that's been around for a little while, to provide alternative visitor accommodation, leisure uses and landscaping associated with that. The application site itself lies in open countryside just to the west of Farthingston Village. And as you can see, the application site is outlined in red and set well back along a very long access road onto the Everton Road. To the north, you have ancient woodland of Mantles Heath, which is also a triple SI. And to the south, you've also got ancient woodland, which is Knightley Wood. There is a bridle way that runs through the middle of the site and joins the access road before exiting onto Everton Road. You'll also see that there are a number of other public footpaths, rights of way, should I say, around the site and to the south of the site. Put my specs on. Right. In terms of visuals, this is the application site, as you see, sitting in open countryside. It's not agricultural land; it's a leisure facility, and it's no secret in terms of the application that the golf course is currently closed. I'm advised after some years in operation. Farthingston Village is to the, as I say, to the east. And in terms of the proposal, this is the application site as it currently exists, which is a highly managed landscape sitting between two ancient woodlands with a water course running through the centre of the site with a number of ponds in there. The existing complex historically formed an old farmhouse, which is substantially extended, as you'll see from the planning history, to provide hotel accommodation, restaurant facilities, and clubhouse facilities, as you would typically find associated with any golf course facility throughout the country. Also, maintenance buildings immediately to the rear. As I say, and as you can see from this, the lighter green areas are the highly manicured, managed sort of fairways and greens, putting greens, etc., and practice greens, with the intervening sort of trees segregating or separating off fairways. Again, for those who've been to golf courses, will typically evident of how they're structured. So in terms of the proposal is primarily to effectively renature or rewild the facility in a way that actually helps integrate the proposal with the sort of neighbouring landscape features ancient woodland by effectively restoring a natural landscape. That's the benefits. In terms of what you're being asked to consider is then the redevelopment of the existing built environment, which effectively is the redevelopment of the existing complex and moving it slightly further south with a new hub building, which would be single story in height, and a new leisure building immediately to the side of that, with what's called a family suite. The existing maintenance building would be retained, but to the south of the site would be introduced a new operational building, car parking for staff, and a new staff building, as well as visitor car parking proposed in this area. In addition to that, as you'll see from the proposal, much of the fairway, open fairways, is replaced with woodland planting and meadow planting. I've got a very sweaty finger now, so the wheel's not working, but there we go. So in terms of now what you proposed, to the north side of the valley would be up to 60 what's called huts, basically, but they are effectively self-contained holiday chalets arranged along the northern side of the valley. But they will be enclosed with a new treeland planting, woodland planting, provide a woodland setting for each of those each of those clusters of holiday chalets. They are a mixture of 1 and 2 bedroom chalets. The only difference, the only additional unit of accommodation is the family suite, which would be a lot up, capable of accommodating up to 10 people. The proposal, as I say, is based on, the primary focus is on improving ecology and biodiversity opportunities within the site, effectively create a destination that people will come to visit and basically enjoy the countryside, but also enjoy the leisure facilities that are on offer in terms of the leisure building, tennis courts located to the north of the site, and all encompassed within a sort of sustainable green approach in terms of providing, again, just to the north side of the site. Just move that. Can I move that? Yes, I can. Is a solar array which will provide much, not all the power, but much of the power to serve the site, as well as green credentials in terms of achieving very high, very good BREEAM accreditation in terms of sustainable design, energy efficiency, etc. throughout the site. If I can just sort of briefly go through photographs of the site. Again, this is the site in context with Farthingstone Village to the east. It's some considerable distance away. And that's the operations building, the hub building, which is, I say, a low profile building. This is the staff accommodation. And that's the family suite, which will be located close to the proposed complex. That's the leisure facility building, again, a very low profile building. So these are snuggled down or settled down into the landscape to mitigate any potential visual impact. And again, this is a typical elevation of the hut, as is described. Self-contained chalet type accommodation that will provide for short stays for families visiting the site. In terms of the visual appearance, these are extracts taken from the site landscape visual impact assessment. And again, this is the existing complex of buildings, the old farmhouse, substantially extended to one side with the golf facility and to the other side in terms of hotel facilities, etc., which are part implemented. Turning to the next set of photographs. Oops. I think this is just something that's been of concern to some locals' representations. This is the access to the site onto Everton Road. And I'll touch on this later, but there are no proposals to alter the access in terms of any significant increases in width or whatever. But it is proposed to resurface the entire length of the access into the site, which is shared with the bridleway. And again, the bridleway is to remain unaffected by the proposals. So I'm just going to go back up to the location plan, Chairman. In terms of assessing the proposal, as you'll see in the report, it considers and assesses the proposal in terms of the principle. Let me pop a drink of water. So the report goes through the principle. We judge in principle the provision of tourism leisure facilities in the open countryside can be supported where the scale is judged to be appropriate to its location without detriment to the landscape, residential amenity, or indeed the tranquility of the open countryside. Also, the justification for the proposal and the loss of the golf course, although regrettable, it doesn't form a sufficient reason for withholding permission, bearing in mind that the proposal effectively proposes replacing it with a leisure facility, recreational facility that'll be open to the community in the same location. So in that sense, the sport you're playing there differs. It'll be a different type of sport, different types of leisure activities, but the whole purpose being to create an attractive area where people will improve health and well-being by being in sort of more ecological, biodiversity surroundings in terms of the local landscape. Highways has also been an issue of concern to the local people. And again, that has been assessed by the local highway authority and judged to be acceptable. Now, this is primarily on the basis that the highway authority, the application has been supported by a traffic impact assessment. The applicants have engaged with the highway authority prior to submission of the application and gone to great lengths to assess the impact of the proposal on the local highway network. And based on the potential for the existing golf course with all the approved facilities, etc., that there would actually be a net decrease in traffic generation onto the local highway. And in that regard, the highway authority have raised no objections to the application, subject to conditions in terms of construction management, provision of parking, and also the implementation and monitoring of the travel plan that is proposed with the application site. Also of concern to locals is the bridleway that runs through the site. And again, I've sort of touched on that. The bridleway runs through the middle of the site. There are no intentions to divert, alter, or obstruct the highway or the bridleway. It will be retained. And if anything, it's sort of line through the site will be enhanced and sort of clearly defined. There are no proposals for any fences either side of the bridleway. The proposal is to work with the public rights of way officer, and you'll see in the report that they've raised no objections in order to properly signpost and make provision for the right of way going through the site. In terms of ecology, no objections have been raised by any of the statutory consultees. There was some concern about proximity of some of these clusters to the ancient woodland, and the applicants have engaged again and positively engaged, and there have been some slight revisions to create a decent corridor between the existing ancient woodland and the proposed chalet areas, so as to reduce or mitigate any likely impact on ecology. And again, you'll see from the ecology officer's comments, there have been no objections raised, subject to conditions ensuring that the very detailed ecology reports submitted with the application in terms of mitigation measures are properly and fully implemented. And these are reflected in the conditions set out at the end of the report. Again, I've touched on sustainability, and again, the applicants are proposing to secure very good, if not excellent, under BREEAM, which is a sort of a national standard in terms of sustainable approaches to development, in terms of energy efficiency and sourcing of materials, etc., etc. Lighting, noise, and contamination. Again, no objections have been raised from the environmental health officers in respect to the proposal, and accordingly, we don't judge that to be an issue that impacts on the tranquility of the area. Again, subject to the conditions set out at the end of the report. Just looking, just by way of update, Chairman, the report set out the number of objections received and those letters of support since the commissioning of the writing of the report that's before members. Additional representations have been raised, so that we have a total of 15 objections and 62 letters of support. They don't raise any new issues that haven't already been considered in the report. Some individual comments made about subjective comments about some of the individual designs of some buildings within the site. But on balance, we consider that the proposal is compliant with policy. And though there is an impact, we consider the benefits in terms of the local economy, and also, and primarily, the impact in terms of helping to integrate the site to its surrounding landscape outweighs any potential harm, and accordingly we are recommending the application be approved, Chairman. I should also advise members that the conditions set out in the report are the subject of ongoing discussions with the applicants, and some minor tweaks have been proposed, but not sufficient to warrant any change in the recommendation to members today. Thanks, Chairman.
Thank you, Eamon. Members, would anyone like to ask any questions related to the presentation, please? Councillor Pritchard.
Thank you, Chair. When you talk about the huts, or I prefer to call them lodges, it's on some of the similar sort of applications that I've come across. There's been a limit on the amount that these lodges can be actually occupied. Does it mean to say that, you know, there's certain restrictions? I know something locally here where we have sort of caravan type things where they, in fact, they can only be occupied 9 months of the year or so. Is that a consideration, or has that been requested?
Through you, Chairman, yeah, if you look at the report, the recommended conditions are set out in the report, set out a series of conditions limiting the occupation of the lodges, stroke huts, including the keeping of a register. The applicants have raised concerns about data protection, but the short answer is, yeah, conditions would be imposed to limit the occupation of the huts, stroke lodges.
What sort of limits are you imposing?
Well, the report, as no doubt you've read, the condition limits.
Well, I've read it, thank you, but I would like to hear it from yourself.
28 days in any calendar year. Conditions are the subject, as I say, of consultations with the applicants. The applicants are suggesting up to 6 months, I believe. But again, any condition imposed by this committee would be capable of being appealed against or applied to vary, remove, or change in due course. So it's for members to decide whether or not the condition as set out in the report is something that they consider acceptable in this instance, or they feel that further restrictions are required. That's for you. The standard conditions that we've set out are regular conditions that we impose on this type of facility. Thanks, Chairman.
Councillor Humphreys.
Thank you, Chair. Just going back to the traffic predictions, you mentioned, officer mentioned there'd be a net decrease compared with the what the golf club might sustain. Is that calculation on the golf club were it operating as normal, not closed, presumably? That was one question, and just also to be clear that the access into the site is single track, and there's no identified need to widen that, given there's going to be a fair bit more traffic, obviously. Thank you.
Through you, Chairman. The access track has a number of passing places, and those will be retained and enhanced in order to allow free passage in and out of the site. As regards the modelling on traffic numbers, the applicants have submitted a traffic impact assessment, and that assessment is based on the potential for the golf club to be operating at full capacity, as it were, and based on those figures, which I understand are conservative figures, that there would be a net reduction based on the modelling on the proposal. So I've written it down somewhere. So in terms of arriving, the net reduction would be 18 vehicle movements a day, and in terms of departures, minus 23 movements per day. So the proposal would result in 137 movements either way per day, and the existing, as they estimate, potentially 155 arriving and 160 leaving per day.
Councillor Stone.
Thank you. There's no mention in the report that I've seen regarding very practical things like sewage and waste. Because that's going to generate an awful lot of both. So how is that going to be managed with that very small access road? I mean, this is a huge amount of waste that's going to be generated there. I'm also really worried about the rights of way of people and the objections by the Ramblers and the British Horse Association. So how is this development going to ensure that people on horses are going to be 2 meters away from cars at a speed of 10 miles per hour?
Through you, Chair, if I may, in terms of the last point there, the actual distance between the horse riders and cars, that's no different to how it could be at the moment. I mean, the golf club itself isn't currently in operation, but it could be refurbed and started straight away without need of any planning permission. And therefore, that interrelationship between the two is considered to be no different than what's being proposed here. So there's no alteration in that. I think Eamon did mention there's no impact on the public rights of way. That's not altering, that's not been stopped up, that's not been diverted through the actual site. So that will remain.
But is the bridle way going to be safe for people to use? Is the issue, isn't it?
Through you, Chairman, we can't anticipate. It's an existing bridle way. It's shared that access with the golf course, as I understand, for the last 50+ years. I'm not aware of any incidents that have been reported in respect of safety, and I don't anticipate the proposed use would be any different. The applicants have indicated, and the public rights of way officer have indicated no objections, that the bridle way will be protected and clearly signposted. So every measure will be taken to ensure that people are users of both the access track and the bridleway will be clearly aware of each other and hopefully work safely. But no, the application is about whether or not the proposed use of the land is acceptable or not in planning terms. And based on the statutory consultation responses we've received to date, we judge it to be acceptable.
Councillor Manners.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just carrying on from Councillor Stone and one or two other comments on this. Yes, what was acceptable 35 years ago, in 1988, when this was given? I mean, the world has changed and regulations have changed. So I'm frankly slightly amazed that the bridle path actually, which uses the track, is going to be allowed this sort of development. I mean, and as far as the locals are concerned, to use the sort of maximum of the golf club as a benchmark is slightly spurious when it hasn't been there for some time and for many years. So I do think the bridle path there is an issue. I do think there is an issue over the passing places, which I think there are 2 or 3. I just think that access road looks understated and not fit for purpose. And I'm frankly amazed that you've agreed it. And it may be the current regulations, but if it is the current regulations, then those regulations just seem slightly wanting. And when I look at what HS2 are doing for bridle paths and footpaths, that's the completely polar opposite. So I just wonder whether we're actually right here.
Through you, Chairman. The statutory consultees, i.e. the Highway Authority, have raised no objections on highway safety grounds, and likewise the Public Rights of Way officer. Who's the council's officer advising on the suitability?
Did they visit the site? Do you know?
Through you, Chairman, if I'm permitted to finish.
Okay.
Yeah. If the highways officer has not identified any problems with the existing access, then I think unless members have evidence themselves that they wish to table and vote on, then we as planning officers have to give weight to the advice of the statutory consultees. We have basically drawn comparisons with the historical use of the site. That is not to say that current standards and practices have been applied to this application. So what is before you are the views of the statutory consultees in respect of the bridleway, in respect of highways, and they attract significant weight. If members have any further evidence that they wish to table, then that's for you. But as officers, we're presenting what the consultees have said, and the consultees have not identified any particular issues subject to the conditions set out in the report. Thanks, Jim.
So can I just come back on that, Chair? Have the localised officer, has he actually been to the site and seen the track?
Again, through you, Chairman, I don't know is the honest answer, but what I would say is that the application has been subject to extensive consultations with the Highway Authority and with all other statutory consultees prior to the submission of the application. There are no proposals to change, widen, amend the access in terms of visibility displays The only proposals are to improve the access in terms of its surfacing, which, to be frank, having driven up it, it's pretty ropey. It's a
Yeah, I agree
concrete
with
track. So that is being improved in order to provide a suitable access into and out of the site. The Highway Authority have not identified any particular issues with the proposal, both in terms of its impact on the local highway network in terms of numbers of cars, vehicles coming to and from the site, nor have they identified any problems with visibility displays entering and exiting the site. And I might add, note that the applicants have submitted a pretty robust traffic impact assessment that has assessed traffic accident records, etc., across the site, visibility displays, traffic numbers to and from the site. And again, that is the evidence that we as planning officers have to go with in order to make the recommendation to you, Chairman. Thank you.
Councillor Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm encouraged by this application, and I have to say that looking at the ecology and biodiversity being improved significantly in the area, it's a rare application, as we know. A question really in terms of the application, has consideration been given in terms of working in partnership with the local community on some of the biodiversity projects at all? Are you aware? And in terms of increasing that, because quite clearly it's quite rare to take a site of this type and effectively rewild it. I'm also encouraged in terms of the use for an employment perspective. So I think that shouldn't be overlooked, particularly in rural communities. In terms of the highways perspective, just an observation, as people not from the area would probably be visiting, I'm sure, and encouraged, it would be useful to have some signage borne in mind in terms of the approach to the location, not necessarily at the location, but certainly going towards the location. We can all use sat-navs, but actually if we look at a different perspective, walkers and visitors in different respects, that'd be useful too. Thank you.
Councillor Stone.
Chair, I think there's a huge amount of merit in this application. And like my colleagues, I'm really pleased with the landscaping and the wilding of the area. But I do think there are still issues, and there are logistical issues. The Ramblers Association have objected to this on the following grounds. The access road to this development is totally unacceptable. It's a single track concrete road and it's a bridleway. A separate foot and bridle path must be provided. It'll be very dangerous for cyclists, horse riders and walkers unless this is done. It seems to me that this site, people are going to access it by car, aren't they? But the hope is surely that people will find other methods of travel in and around the site while they're there, which meets all our climate emergency objectives. So I think we need to take that a bit more seriously. Why can't a safe, separate foot and bridle path be provided here?
Again, Chairman, I can simply refer to the advice of the Public Rights of Way officer and the provisions being put forward by the applicants, which is to clearly signpost and improve the existing lines of the Public Rights of Way, so they remain unaffected by the proposal. To seek to divert them, etc., may then result in sort of further delays. They're not being changed. They're being incorporated into the proposal, and if anything, improved in terms of their existing alignment and surface treatment and signposting. Thanks, Chairman.
Any other members? Sorry, Councillor Manners.
Thank you, Chair. Just building on that, I don't think Councillor Stone's asking for it to be diverted necessarily, but I just wonder whether there's a process here that we can actually, and I too also like the principle of the development or the proposal, but it's the devil is in the detail. And I just wonder whether we're allowing ourselves to go down, approve something which hasn't been fully thought through. I'm not convinced that the local highways officer has fully been there and understood some of the issues. And to ignore the Ramblers and the British Horse Society, I think is remiss. So I just wonder whether we, Chair, we can actually look at adding a condition to review the actual access on this particular site.
Yes, through you, Chair, if I can. No, we can't add that condition, I'm afraid, Councillor. The application is, as Eamon's mentioned, in front of you today. Sorry. The highway officers haven't objected to it, neither have the Public Rights of Way officers. There's an improvement to the access arrangement, resurface and so forth. That's what's in front of members to consider now. If we want to move away, or if members want to move away from that, then they'll have to come up with some valid planning justifications as to why they want to refuse the application based on that detailing. And if I may, Chair, through yourself, I haven't had any detail that would suggest that would be a form of reasoning that could be substantiated at appeal. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor James.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I use that road a lot. In fact, I use it to get here. I go up through Farthingstone and Lichborough, and then finally round to Greensnort and come in the back way to Toaster. So I know it very well. And I used to go up to Farthingstone Golf Club before I had the back injury quite a lot. My kids all had ponies and all have used the bridleways around there. They'd go up to Snorscombe, Mantles Heath, and then cut round. So they knew it very well. And there's not many people do that at all. And especially these days, because it's very unsafe now on country roads. And it's not really suitable for kids to do any road work. So one of the things I was pleased about was that the bridleway is being left as it is. As far as the access road goes, there's no problems at all with accessing the site or coming out of it. I never worry about that. The only worry I have on that road is at the top of Everton Road, which is off the map here, is the crossroads, right angle crossroads. And you know, I always honk my hooter at those crossroads in case some of these that go around, you know, on a sort of country run aren't aware that they've got to stop when they're coming from Wheaton or from Preston Capes way. So I give it a good blast with a hooter, same as when I cross the Welsh Road, just the same. Where there was once a very terrible accident, dreadful accident, 5 people, I think it was. But yeah, I don't worry about that. The only highway issue I've had, and I've been getting very angry about this winter, is WNC's responsibility, which is at the top of the Everton Road near the crossroads, about 75 yards towards the golf club site. The road subsides, it always has done. And during this winter in particular, it had subsided so badly that it was necessary for all traffic to go on the right-hand side of the road going towards that golf course, or the left-hand side, the right-hand side coming back. And as it's a brow of a hill, you couldn't see either way. It used to frighten the hell out of me, frankly. But that's WNC's responsibility. And the other thing is the condition of the road as one's going into Lichborough. It's about time that was resurfaced as well. That's WNC's responsibility. But from a safety point of view, I can't find anything wrong with this application. That access road up to the golf club, it used to be terrible at one stage. It's a vast improvement now on what it was. And that's up to the owners to sort that out. But I don't see an issue with the bridleway. You've got to be a fairly experienced rider to go that far away from home, I would think, and wander around there. And I've seen them when I've played golf there, no problem at all.
Thank you. Eamon, I think you want to come back on something.
Yeah, I think just to clarify the point on the right of way. In the consultation responses at page 69, the rights of way officer has recommended a condition, which I'll read out. Prior to commencement of works affecting any existing public right of way, full details of any enhancement, improvement, signage, diversion or closure shall be submitted to and gain the approval of the local planning authority to ensure that the public rights of way remain accessible and safe for users throughout and on completion of the development. Thanks, Chairman.
I'm assuming there's no one else now. We'll now move to the speakers. Christine Porrand, would you like to come to the, would you like to come to the front, please? If you just press the middle one. Yes, take a seat, obviously. Yes. Well, you can move that right up to. Just press the middle. That's it.
There.
You've got 5 minutes.
5 minutes from now. Okay. At present, the area is a lovely tranquil place linking Knightley Wood and Mansell's Heath with the surrounding agricultural land. There is no light pollution and outside activities end at dusk. So from dawn to dusk, it is empty. And during the day, a tranquil space which was used by golfers, ramblers and horse riders alike. We have seen deer, hare, rabbits, skylarks and badgers thrive as they can move between the area and the surrounding woodland. The proposed 6-foot perimeter fence will stop this movement, and development will destroy their habitat and create noise and light pollution. The pressure on local footpaths and facilities from the 150 plus additional visitors has not been taken into consideration. I note that a previous application to build 14 huts was refused, and I cannot see there is any further argument to prove 61 huts, 3 large ancillary buildings on undeveloped land, plus an outside pool, paddle, pickle and tennis courts, a 17-bed ensuite staff block, 520 solar panels, and 112 visitor and 89 staff car park. 1/5 of the mature trees on the site, 176, will need to be felled to do so. All significant changes to what we were told in the initial consultations when it was presented as a light touch development. The area is extremely tranquil now, and the type of external activities planned, scale of the build, and the pump needed to pump sewage up to the village will destroy this, which is a significant loss of amenity. There is no public transport, so everyone will come by car. The roads are narrow and meant for light traffic, being shared by walkers, horse riders and cyclists too. And the village gets, at most in Farthingstone, 3 to 4 cars an hour on average. The scale of the extra daily vehicle movements are not staggered as it would be with a successful local golf club, but there will be 4 daily spikes at check-in, check-out and staff starting and leaving times. This will create noise and traffic pollution and make the roads unsafe, as visitors will take the most convenient route given by their sat-navs, which will be through the villages. Can planning stipulate or enforce a condition that all arrivals will use the Everton end of the Everton Road rather than going through the villages? I think not. Clearly, staff will travel by car from outside the area, and these vehicle movements don't seem to be really factored in. Our local employment game is limited. And in fact, they have already let go specialised local ground staff and plan to demolish a tenanted bungalow. In summary, the level of noise, traffic and light pollution will cause significant harm to the local villagers. The development is too large, a third bigger in population than Farthingstone, and is much more extensive with more hard surfaces than what we were told in the original consultations. The development will create light pollution in a dark area, noise and traffic pollution in a quiet rural area, and it is in contravention of the local plan. There is not sufficient mitigation from the other factors for it to be approved in its present form, in my mind. A smaller number of huts would be better. The previous owner had no interest in the business, but it could be a successful golf club, as evidenced by previous members struggling to book a game at their new club. So the loss of the course is a real shame.
Finished.
Yes, finished. I did it with the time.
Members, would anyone like to ask the speaker any questions? No? No. Thank you. Sorry, good point. Now I move to any ward councillors who are present. I can see Councillor Smith. Would you like to speak, Councillor Smith?
Thank you, Chair.
Got 5 minutes,
Good
Councillor Smith.
afternoon, committee. Thank you for having me. I'm very familiar with the site. I'm a mountain biker. I use the bridleway. David lives just over the hill. I hear concern from various members of the committee around highways and things. This application, I think it's fair to say, has been well consulted on, very well consulted on. Whether people agree with it or whether they don't, you've heard somebody who doesn't agree with it just now. But the consultation, you haven't had the benefit of a site visit. And I really, really think that the committee, for you to make a decision on this application that you should visit the site, because it will answer 1,000 questions in probably 10 minutes. The access road, is there likelihood of conflict? Again, I think you need to visit. Are the roads up to it? Drive over there, do a site visit. Every question I have, the one sort of answer to it is do a site visit and you'll learn much, much more about it. There's talk of the rewilding. Yes, there is rewilding, but we've got some ancient woodland around here which needs to interconnect, and a 6-foot fence is a bit challenging, particularly for muntjac deer. Trees and things, yes, they do get eaten by deer, of course they do, but there's other mitigation. You can put tree guards around those. So I'm not going to labour any points here other than I would really, really, really encourage you to, hopefully somebody will propose and you'll get a seconder and you'll get a lot of hands in the air to do a site visit. From that, I think you'll be able to settle your minds on the application. That's all I've really got to say on this. But I'm very strong in my suggestion.
Councillor Stone, would you like to ask Councillor Smith any questions?
I would. Thank you for that contribution. Are you objecting to the application?
I'm not objecting to the application. I'm bringing forward my thoughts in relation to the committee needs to be fully informed in its decisions. There is some questions with regards to local highways. Was it a desktop assessment or was it a visit? I don't know. But all these questions, all the questions that have come up so far today, I think you need to visit the site because it will really enlighten you as to what you're dealing with. I promise you.
Thank you. I'm new to this committee, Chair, and I have to say that I'm a bit bewildered by the fact we haven't done any site visits. I would appreciate them in the future, to be honest with you.
Points noted. Thank you. Anybody else to ask Councillor Humphreys?
Question of site visit has been raised by you, not by any member of this committee as yet. I think really, well, for me, particular issue is whether it, as members have said, there is a lot of merit in this proposal. And I'm sure many of us would wish to support it, but is it compliant with policy in terms of the being of appropriate scale, and is the tourism element justified given the scale of it?
I'm no expert on those matters. I know the area exceptionally well. I've lived there for nearly 20 years. I've covered many hundreds of miles on mountain bikes in that period, walked the area. I know it well, and I think to make a decision, you need to get your feet on the ground to go along. And the consultation and the consultation encouraged visits from parish councils. It was really, really well done, I promise you. But you haven't had the benefit of that, and I think you really do need the benefit of a site visit.
Thank you, Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Now to the applicant, Robert Nadler. Thank you. You've got 5 minutes.
They're sitting over there.
Sorry, it's not an inquiry. It's a planning meeting.
Okay. Good afternoon, councillors, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to address the committee. My name is Robert Nadler, co-owner of 55 Hospitality, the applicant. I'm joined today by key members of my team. I've worked in hospitality and leisure for 18 years, and during that time, I've witnessed huge changes in terms of what customers want. Over the last 5 years, it's become clear that there's a significant interest in reconnecting with nature. We've therefore carefully developed an innovative ecotourism offer. Our vision is driven by three things: creating places of tranquility for our guests and visitors, embracing local business to drive our supply chain and ensure local distinctiveness, and to truly give back to nature. All ambitions which we believe fit well with your vision for West Northamptonshire, and which we hope can help reinforce Northamptonshire's continuing development as a forward-looking visitor destination. It took us more than 2 years to find a place where we thought we could realize this vision. Set into the wonderful Northamptonshire landscape, Farthingstone gives us the potential to nurture the tranquil nature of the area of special landscape character that the site sits within. We found so many wonderful local businesses here that we're targeting a minimum of 50% of all produce for our restaurant to be sourced locally. We estimate that of the 100 new jobs to be created on site, 89 will be for local people. We estimate that the local spend will rise by more than £6 million per annum. And in order to harness this opportunity for local benefit, we're working closely with Northampton College, Moulton College, the University of Northampton, and the West Northamptonshire Employment Support Service as skills partners, as well as the THEMLEP. In terms of nature, we have a 93-acre site which, while superficially green, contributes very little to local biodiversity. Working with your landscape and biodiversity officers, the site gives us a once-in-a-generation opportunity to reinforce a landscape that positively responds to the adjacent woodlands and that can heal years of use of pesticides and herbicides necessary for the golf course, and that can be species rich, delivering a biodiversity net gain, BNG net gain of 36% against a target of 10%. The hotel, the current hotel, greens and fairways, which define the rather alien character of the site, are in poor condition and take up the whole 93 acres. As set out in your officer's report, the proposed development seeks to renature 80% of the site, removing inappropriate planting whilst introducing over 500 new native trees to reinforce habitat corridors between the adjacent woodlands. Public rights of way will be enhanced through species planting, creating a more naturalized environment than that which exists today. Based on extensive analysis of the local topography and views into the site, new buildings have been carefully placed so as to be incidental features, subservient to the landscape character of the site and wider setting. These structures have been designed to respond to the local vernacular, using local ironstone in the materials palette and adopting recessive rural building forms. As an exemplar of ecotourism, an all-electric strategy will reduce carbon emissions by 63%. The visitor huts will tread lightly, designed to rest on low-impact reversible foundations, and in line with circular economy principles, materials from the demolition of the existing buildings will be recycled on site within the construction works. We've held a series of public consultations attended by 120 people, and we were delighted to see the significant levels of local support received during the formal consultation period. We've continued to engage with the local parish councils, and whilst noting concerns around traffic, have worked with the Highways Department to ensure that where guests do arrive by car, they follow the most appropriate routes. Your officers agree that traffic flows will be less than those associated with the golf course when trading successfully, and by granting us permission, the council will gain additional controls that they did not have over the golf course use through a travel plan drafted to encourage guests to minimize their use of private cars. This afternoon, you have the opportunity to bring to life and facilitate the creation of a hospitality venue with an ethos truly underpinned by all three pillars of sustainability: environmental, economic, and social. A place that thrives on its tranquility, creates opportunities for local businesses, and gives back to nature. We commend your officer's recommendation to you and would be pleased to take any questions. Thank you.
Members, any question? Right. Councillor Pritchard.
Thank you, Chair. With regards to the lodges, there is going to be a situation where, in fact, they're not going to be utilised for 28 days. How are you actually going to achieve this? Will it actually be closing down for January, or how else would you suggest?
We are a hotel, so we're not holiday lodges that are rented out by the month or 3 months. We're a hotel, our average length 3 days. That's what we based our calculations on, our marketing on. However, there will be people who want to come on a regular basis, and therefore 28 days will be short. And one of the discussions we will want to have with the planning officers is, can we extend that? As I think has been indicated, we would prefer to see a lengthier period, as well as for staff. The staff accommodation is really for staff to come and locate themselves in the area, and if they don't have accommodation, they have a period of time within which to find accommodation locally. So we need more than a month for people like that. But it's not a difficult task to ensure that people stay within the limits as they are given. I've been in the hospitality business, as I said, for quite some time. I've never seen a 28-day limit in a year. I mean, that would be really quite unusual.
Councillor Manning.
Yes.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Robert. I enjoyed your talk. More
Thank you.
contemporary buzzwords in 5 minutes than I've heard before. Very good. Just got 3 questions, please. The deer fence, is it wholly necessary? It's not a security fence, I trust.
It's not a security fence. However, the Woodland Trust have commended us on the use of the fence because they want us to prevent people going into the woodlands on either side, particularly the SSSI on Mantles Heath. So they would prefer us to have a fence like that. Deer and growing trees are not generally compatible. So the intention is, this is not a fence to stop all animals getting through. There'll be badger runs, which will allow smaller animals to get through. So it'll not be an issue. It's an issue for larger deer, but larger deer will make their way around it anyway. Muntjac, who everybody seems to love, are not a native species. They're from China. And they do have a really deleterious effect on growing trees. The intention is we keep this for a number of years, and then we'll have deer hops and other things to make sure that we can have a more beautiful animal-rich landscape. And I just want to say, our primary concern is renaturing less than rewilding. So we're not going to have wildebeest or zebras or buffaloes on site.
Okay, second question, please. The officer's report, he mentioned that the Farthingstone had asked for a 30-mile-an-hour speed limit 106 contribution, which isn't allowed under this development. But would you be willing to give a commitment to this committee that you'd be willing to fund a 30-mile-an-hour speed limit in Farthingstone if they so wished?
We're more than happy to enter into that discussion if you want. If we're, I don't know what the legal position is, whether we're allowed or not allowed to give commitments of this sort, but to enter into a unilateral undertaking or something like that is certainly on our agenda. That's not an issue.
Can we just ask
And the third question, sorry,
Just on that particular point, if it gives further clarification, that there is no evidence to call for a 30-mile-an-hour speed limit or something equivalent. The response from the highway authority is quite clear. They're not asking for one, so it has to be evidence-based.
Well, and I'm sure Farthingstone Parish Council, I live in a much smaller village and we evidence the need for it. So it would be possible to evidence it. What I'm asking for is, would there be a contribution outside the sort of formal 106 is really what I'm asking for.
Assuming the Highways Authority are happy with this to do it, yes.
Okay, and the third question is, my understanding is you're not going to have an external leisure membership, is that correct?
Correct. This is not going to be a membership-based club.
Right.
Oh, it's a membership-based hotel. It is a hotel, not a club.
And but you would be having people coming in for restaurant meals and snacks?
Absolutely. What we'd like to do is clearly encourage people to come by foot on the public rights of way or by cycle. If they're coming by vehicle, they will need to book because we have a limited number of parking spaces. And what we don't want to do is encourage people to come from everywhere and just drive in. You want to come for lunch, you want to come to use the leisure facilities, you book. But it's not membership. And when we get to a point where we have too many people, you can't book, obviously.
So are you saying that the model is essentially a leisure club which people could book over and above booking in a lodge?
Yes, absolutely. If people from outside wish to book, they can book, and as long as we have space. But we are very conscious. The two things we're very conscious of: one, that locally we don't want to encourage a massive influx of people, number one. And number two, from a commercial perspective, what we're creating here is a premier leisure destination where quiet and peacefulness is part of the offer. Okay. And therefore, if you have something that's horribly crowded,
I understand that. I understand that. My question really is to traffic. because I just want to ensure that the traffic survey that you and the Local Highways Authority have approved included a certain number of vehicle movements for leisure, not membership, but leisure use, outside lodge use, and for a restaurant and what I call walk-up restaurant business. And
Can I turn, am I allowed to bring in my traffic consultant to answer that point?
I was just talking to the solicitor. What was the point, councillor Manners?
well, my point is the vehicle movements forecast, which the LHA have accepted. I just want to ensure that it allowed for what I could call a leisure membership or a leisure use outside lodge use. We've got 60 lodges, so you have essentially 60 cars. Let's just assume that in today's environment, whether they walk or whatever. And what worries me is that you financially, having been involved in these type of developments, is that the leisure membership and leisure outside leisure use is a key contributor financially, and therefore the operator will be encouraged to people to come in by car, which will over and exceed the leisure membership or the vehicle data that's been presented.
Let me reassure you, Councillor Manners, that our financial models are not predicated on outside numbers. Our financial models say there's nothing that comes from the outside, so we don't need that from a financial perspective. We're not under pressure financially for that. But in terms of how our numbers have been put together, if I may ask David Frisby, my traffic consultant, to come and explain, if I'm allowed to.
Yes, just to clarify that point. Can you just shout very loudly?
Press, yeah, red, press.
Okay.
Come and sit here.
Yes, Councillor, is the answer. We split the traffic numbers out quite specifically into starting trips to those that will be arriving by shuttle bus, those that are overnight guests, those that are day visitor trips, those that are service vehicles. They resulted in the numbers that you heard earlier from the officer, which was 137 trips each way, which in the peak equates to coming in and out of the site vehicle every 4 minutes. So to answer your question, yes, we've considered them, and to qualify that, it's a vehicle every 4 minutes, and it's absolute peak coming up and down the track. Hopefully that answers your question.
Thank you.
But if I may, I'd just like to reiterate, the financial model is predicated on no membership. We're not going to have membership. We don't want that. That precludes us doing a commercial sellout. If a company wants to take the whole place, they can't do that if you've got membership.
Can I come back on one question, please?
Yes,
to the officer?
Councillor Manners.
Are we able to put a condition, a planning condition, that then the site could not be used for a leisure membership model? I haven't got the words in front of me, but what would worry me is that obviously your best of intentions, one reason or another, you fly off to wherever, and we then find an operator that is operating, is on a much larger scale, and making the site much busier and causing a lot of inconvenience and noise for the local residents. So what conditions can we put on that from a planning perspective, please?
Can we let the solicitor answer that?
Chair,
please?
just through you, just to be clear, that there has to be some kind of evidence-based approach to imposing conditions, and they have to be compliant with the community infrastructure levy regulations. There is there's no information before you, this committee, to warrant imposition of such a condition, unless you have evidence to support what you're suggesting. I appreciate there are concerns, but it has to be evidence-based, and it also has to be compliant with some regulations. So we just need to be careful about that.
Okay, fine, but surely then we can say if the model that's been presented and accepted by the LHA, if the vehicle movements were to be over and above that for any period, consistently for any period of time, they would then be in breach of the planning condition. We need some security or some guarantee for the local
Again, I
resident.
just go back to the main point. Is there a concern? I mean, sorry, there is a concern.
Well, no, there isn't a concern with necessarily with the numbers presented, but we have to accept reality that these sites do change, and the site could change dramatically in terms of the usage. And so I'm looking for some security. When we build a housing estate, we know there are 200 houses. There are going to be 2 or 3 cars. We know that. You're never going to get many more cars. But this is a different situation.
Totally understand, but it's a case of what if, and you've got to be guarded against that as a committee. You can't base a decision on what if. You have to make a decision based on what's in front of you. And there is no data or evidence or concerns of that nature before this committee. So again, to be compliant with the SIL regulations, we can only impose conditions that are lawful and that are evidence-based as well. So again, you just need to be guarded on that particular point. It's not something that's before you. It's not something that's it's raised as a concern, but it has to have some kind of evidence basis to it.
Yeah, but there's already a condition in there that they can't let the lodges for more than 28 days. So that's a condition. That's not, I mean, that's a simple condition that's to stop it being used as a housing estate rather than a hotel. So this is the same sort of condition I'm asking for.
Through you, Chair, if I can. No, it's not the same kind of condition you're asking for, in short. There are a set number of lodges, as the highway consultants already mentioned, the vehicle movements to and from the site have been worked out quite specific in collaboration with the local highway authority. That's what it's been based upon. That's what, if the highway officer had come back and said, or reverted back to the officers and asked for a condition of that nature, then yes, by all means, that would be factual evidence based and based on information that came in support of the application. But unfortunately, that's not where we are, councillor.
Sorry, councillor Stone.
May I ask my planning consultant has some.
Councillor Stone.
Thank you. I wanted to make a comment about the volume of traffic, because obviously there won't be 4 traffic movements every minute, 1 every 4 minutes, because there'll be spikes of traffic, won't there? So the issue is about how those spikes are going to be managed to make sure that the environment is kept clean and safe. That's one question. I'd like some assurances about your view on the safety around the bridleway, because obviously we want to encourage walkers, cyclists and equestrians. And the third question is about your waste management, because there's nothing about it in the report, and I'm really worried about it, because this project is going to generate a huge amount of waste. So have you got, you know, bio waste facilities, composting facilities, eco-friendly waste management strategies? How is all of that going to be managed?
I think I'm going to ask my consultants to
Sorry,
respond. They can respond more.
The officers
appropriately.
first, if you don't mind. We'll just ask the officers first.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
My apologies.
Right. Eamon, oh, Sean, do you want to go back on anything at all? I think we've covered the bridleway several times now. It's not changing. It's the same. That's it.
Again, through you, Chairman, condition 34 talks about waste management.
But sorry, Eamon.
Condition 34 talks about waste management.
Turn out, please, Eamon.
Yes, sorry, I can come back on that, Chair, if I may. It's page 98 of the members' papers. It's the condition number 34, notwithstanding the details submitted with the application and otherwise hereby approved, proposed development hereby permitted shall not be first brought into use or occupied until details of, the first point, a refuse and recycling collection management strategy, which includes details of the collection arrangements and whether or not refuse and recycling collections will be carried out by the council or an alternative service provider. Next point, details of enclosures, screened facilities and internal areas of the proposed building to be used for the storage of the recycling containers, wheeled refuse bins and other refuse storage containers where applicable, and plans showing satisfactory points of collection for refuse and recycling have been submitted to and approved in writing by the LPA. That's a condition that's relatively standard, albeit slightly more beefed up for this type of actual usage. But that is quite a standard condition that's used in developments of this nature, councillor. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Sorry, councillor Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It is very rare, as indicated earlier, to see a hospitality venture of this type come into our county and encouraging such great biodiversity being improved. and the rewilding, and I think there are other terms used in terms of really increasing the opportunity for nature to be more present and evident in our environments. And I'm really obviously understanding that it was an established leisure facility and clearly it had many visitors, and I am sure that as a viable position, all businesses want to encourage that. And clearly we wouldn't want to be restricting that. The element in terms of employment, which I think is really, really powerful here from a rural employment perspective, and clearly something we've been majoring on as a council for many years to encourage good quality employment in the area. I'd like to hear from Mr. Nadler, if I may, in terms of the 100 jobs, I believe, that was in the application, and around about 80 or so were very local jobs. I'd like to understand more about that, and particularly how they're linked to the colleges, to understand if it's something of the apprenticeship type style. And the other element is that clearly it's an eco retreat. I understand that, and which I'm very encouraging, because it really is something where we clearly lack the appreciation of our beautiful nature and our fantastic county. So around us, we do have some fantastic sites, which I'd love to encourage more people to enjoy in every way possible, but particularly from a hospitality perspective. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you want to come back, Speaker?
Yes, with pleasure. Thank you, Councillor Gonzalez, for those questions. With regard to employment, we're going to be increasing employment by approximately 100 people. Of that, we expect at least 89, 90 jobs will go to local people. There will be some influx from outside. I think some senior positions might have to be brought from outside the county, but we're working very closely, as I said, with SEMLEP, with West Northamptonshire Support Service for Employment, Malton College, Northampton University, Northampton College. We have already had outreach to them, and we've done a number of events with them, because we want the very best available. The young students, when they're coming out looking for a job, we want them to pick us over anybody else. So one of the elements that we're doing is we're having a pay structure, which we believe will be an exemplar pay structure, where we're paying considerably in excess of those equivalent jobs, even in London, because we want the best. We're going to be a luxury establishment. We want really good people who stay. One of the biggest problems you have in employment is churn, because they're not really happy. If young people are working for an employer who is really truly green, who means what he says and isn't just paying lip service to it, and they're working for somewhere that is beautiful and in a luxury sector, they're excited. They want to work for you and they want to stay with you. So that's what we want to encourage. So yes, there's going to be an incredibly diverse range of opportunities, apprenticeships, of course, and we'll start with apprenticeships through the construction process. Our contractor, who we've worked with for nearly 20 years, already we're talking about outreach, particularly to Malton College, for apprenticeships on the construction stage, and then getting students involved from a very early stage so that they understand what we're going to be building, and they can get excited. We are the job they're all trying to get when they leave school, but there'll also be higher level jobs, of course. So there's going to be a very wide range of employment, and we're very excited about that. We hope that they're going to be as excited as we are with it. With regard to the ecology side, our aim is to be net zero carbon in operation. That's scopes 1 and 2. Obviously, scope 3 is much more difficult to deal with. That's why we've got a solar farm, and it's located in an area where it's hardly visible. But as our planning officer said, we won't be able to have, with a solar farm, you can't have energy all throughout the year. We will have battery backup, and technology is improving dramatically in that area. So we hope that will help considerably. But and we talk about recycling and rubbish. Absolutely, we want to make sure that we're not leaving rubbish anywhere. Where we can recycle, we will. We're going to be doing it with the demolition on site. We absolutely will be doing it with the food waste and other waste that we generate as much as possible. It's critically important to us as an article of faith that we really are an exemplar eco project.
I think that's a comprehensive answer.
I was just going to ask just one little piece there in terms of the element of construction. How long is the development phase planned or scheduled for? The development phase from day go to the first customer effectively come to the door?
From the day we start on site, and there's quite a lot to be done before, not least great crested newts and all the ecology, which is something we're working on, and we're talking with Natural England about that. 18 months. Our contractor's given us a program of 17 months, so we've worked on the basis of 18 months.
Lovely. Thank you very much indeed.
Councillor Humphreys.
Thank you very much. You mentioned the Woodland Trust earlier. I just wanted to check. They've recommended that you build the lodges at least 30 metres from ancient woodland rather than the rules, which are 20 metres, I think. Can you confirm whether you'd be doing that? Also, the removal of the 167 trees, I'm assuming they're in the main the non-native species that have been planted in the last 50 years. Is that correct?
Firstly, dealing with the 30 metres, the majority of the huts will be 15 metres from the boundary, which is the national standard. However, we have been advised that the area, there's an area of Mental Heat, which is an SSSI, obviously, and there they've requested that we move the huts back to 30 metres, and we're very happy to do that. There's no problem at all about doing that, and that is something that we will do. I apologize. The second question was, the trees, my apologies. Yes, 167 trees are Class C trees. They are none of them native trees. We don't want to take down any native trees. One of the problems that the landscape officer pointed out to us, and because I'm not an expert in this area, is some of these conifers are crowding out the native trees and don't allow them to grow. And he would like to take out possibly more than we're going to take out initially, but they were planted because they're fast growing and they were needed for the golf. And so we'll be taking out quite a few of those. But what we're also going to be doing is planting a lot of understory. As you know, with golf courses, they mow them right up to the trees. So whilst some of the trees will go and will increase views, in terms of understory, that will limit the views into the grounds that we're creating, into the beautiful landscape we're creating.
Sorry, Councillor Pritchard.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of very quick questions. You mentioned, or your colleague mentioned, day visitors. How many, and bearing in mind my colleague's comments, with regards, how many day visitors do you anticipate? And secondly, what will they do when they get to your location? And in future, is there any anticipation that you will have camping?
In terms of numbers of day visitors, perhaps David he's got the numbers, but before he gets to that, I'll just say what they will do. We'll have a restaurant, we'll have a cafe, we have an art studio where we'll be having events. We will have other kinds of events with speakers. There is obviously the wellness center with an indoor and outdoor swimming pool and treatments. So we believe that those will be popular for our guests, maybe also with people from outside. And there are tennis courts, paddle courts, and pickleball courts. For those who don't know about pickleball, it's the fastest growing sport in America by a very wide margin. So there's quite a lot for them to do. But because we're limited by the number of car parking spaces we've got, and people arriving by car have to book, therefore, if they haven't booked, they won't be able to get in because there will be a barrier. We'll limit the number of people. As I said, we don't want a crowd because our primary objective is to satisfy our visitors who are going to be paying quite expensive rates to come and stay with us. And what they're buying is tranquility. And the last thing you want to do is come in and you find that you can't use the tennis, you can't get a booking in the restaurant, you can't use the swimming pool because it's crowded. That would be anathema to what we're creating.
Do you anticipate camping?
Absolutely not. So we're not a glamping site. No, it's got a market, but it's the opposite end of what we're doing in terms of numbers. I don't know if David Frisby, my traffic engine consultant, can give you the numbers of people we're anticipating.
Yeah, do you want to do that, please? I think you've already said it once. Yes, I thought so.
And just to reassure Councillor Manners, that's been done for traffic. It hasn't been done for the economics. We've disregarded them in the economic calculations.
Thank you. Anybody else? Quickly. Councillor James.
Just a little question, if I can ask Mr. Nadler. Are you going to retain any feature that it was formerly a golf course? Like, are you going to retain any of the features of the former golf course, like a putting green, for example, or something like that? Because a little bit of sentimentality, I think, had done a previous owner. Yeah, no, not that.
We will have a mini golf. So,
Yes.
And that might go on a putting green, but greens, greens and fairways are not really compatible with renaturing. So I'm sorry, but I am pleased to say that the members that we had, the very few members, when it was a successful golf course, it had nearly 700 members. When we acquired it, it had barely 150, and they were dropping out like flies. So much as they loved the course, they were happy to go somewhere else. There's 18 golf courses within a 20-minute drive, or 16 golf courses within a 20-minute drive. So there's plenty. If you want golf, there's a hell of a lot of alternatives in the area.
Yeah, I was just thinking, I remember the former owner, he put a lot of effort into that and made that a golf course out of nothing. And I think, well, maybe there might be something left there to say that.
We could call the restaurant the Fairway.
Well, well, that's better than nothing.
Right, thank you. Take your seat again. That'd be great. Well, I think we've covered quite a lot of things there. We'll now go to the debate, councillors. Would anyone like to open up the debate? Councillor Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have to say, having gone through the application and having obviously heard today the intensity of the opportunity to improve the area, it's interesting how golf courses aren't really very linked positively to ecology. As we know, the proliferation of Leylandii trees all over the country due to golf courses, I have to say, and they do get out of hand. So I think it would be welcome to have those removed and others planted in their place that are native species. I think that would be certainly much better for the ecology and for the locality. I'm very positive towards the promotion of employment rurally, as I've indicated earlier. And I have to say the enhancement of the area will certainly encourage that. And I'm very pleased that there will be very much locally based jobs there. And obviously would encourage the applicant at all times to try and fill all those 100 jobs from the local area where at all possible. And it does sound that they have a good structure in place in terms of the links with the college, the university. I think that's really quite important, and obviously the community that they've indicated as well. So I'd like to encourage that, and obviously we mustn't forget, as an eco retreat, it'll be quite exclusive, bring in investment, I presume, from other parts, not just obviously from our country. So I'm sure overseas market really, and we mustn't forget that we are an international destination, and we should encourage that too, because to make anything viable needs to be encouraged, not just from our shores, but further afield. And we are centrally placed for all those connectivity areas. So I'd like to encourage and support the employment, certainly the rural employment and the links from that. I think we mustn't overlook the importance of that. Thank you.
Is that a proposal to accept officers' advice or not?
It would be, Mr. Chairman, absolutely, to endorse it, and also to really maximise the links to employment. Absolutely.
Right. So that is there a seconder to that? Is that Councillor Manners?
Could I actually just say something with regards?
Sorry, hang on. Have we got a seconder to that, please?
Well, before we actually get to the vote, I would.
No, we're
prefer
not getting to the vote. We're just actually accepting that there's a motion being put forward to accept officers' advice by Councillor Gonzalez. Would anyone like to second that, please? Councillor Stone. Is that a yes? Right. So we've got that now. We can now carry on.
Thank you. With regards to, I've got a very similar sort of situation in my particular ward. And one thing that has actually been emphasised is that we really should have had a site visit. It's something which you cannot really underestimate some of the local issues and also the environment that these sort of situations are actually going to impose. So therefore, I particularly when you look at 61 lodges, you know, it's going to have a heck of an impact. And also, once again, as probably one of my colleagues, I know Mr. Smith was saying, is that we really, really should have had a site visit.
Anybody else wishes to speak? Taking that as a no. Sorry, councillor Manners.
Thank you, Chair. Whilst I completely concur with councillor Pritchard that a site visit would definitely have been preferable, I don't, on my considered opinion, I don't think a site visit is going to really change my view on this application. I am actually in favour of the application. I would like to note that I do think that our local highways authority have made a very weak assessment of the application, and as I've already been told quite clearly that it's it's been accepted, so I can't change that. But I do think the lack of detail on the various scenarios and challenge to the applicant on the highways, I think is very regrettable in this situation. And I just hope we're not going to open ourselves up to something in 5 to 10 years where we find a much more aggressive economic development on the site and not Mr. Nadler operating it. And that is the danger. But I know that's a what if, but that's what, you know, this is what we're trying to do, is trying to look to the future. So site visit we should have done. I'm not going to ask, put a proposal that we have a site visit in this occasion. But I will support the application with deep reservations on the highways.
Thank you, councillor Manners. I did mention it, I think, at the last Daventry area planning meeting, but I'll say it again. I think a highways representative should be here all the time when these things are being discussed. Sorry. So I presume that's a yes. So we can put that in the minutes and we'll take that forward. Okay. Right. If there's no one else, councillor Gonzalez has proposed they will accept officer's advice, which has been seconded by councillor Stone.
Sorry, Chair, sorry to interrupt. Is that with the inclusion of the public rights of way condition that Eamon mentioned as well?
Yes, that's correct.
So you want that just adding on?
Yes, I think that's reasonable. Thank you.
Right. Okay. Councillor Stone, are you happy with that? Right. Thank you. So we'll now go to the vote. So those in favour of accepting officer's advice, can they please show their hands? 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I think that's classed as unanimous. Yeah, that's unanimous. Thank you very much indeed. There's no urgent business being brought forward, so I'll now close the meeting at 15:56. Thank you, members.